Chapter 3. The Gireni. Princess Seluca and Lugio swam out of the palace and down to the old monastery. The princess felt like she was buzzing with excitement. She had rarely left the palace and had certainly never been so deep in the lake, since her parents were so overprotective. Her father had just one bad experience, and suddenly she could not do anything. Of course, that one bad experience was fleeing from a violent attack and overheating and nearly dying, followed by learning that his mother had died and the fate of the Nacha rested on him, a child. She looked back at her companion. Lugio was swimming slower and more cautiously, but was not too far behind. They reached the monastery soon after leaving. It looked like a simple structure, now overgrown with underwater plants, but otherwise in remarkable condition. Knowing the order, though, it was probably more complex on the inside. Above the entrance had once been carved the name of the order that had lived there, the old and studious Paladins, an order that was said to date back to before the Nacha came to Atia more than 800 years ago. But the inscription had long since faded. Strangely, the malevolent air that was said to surround it was gone. "Milady!" Lugio called as he caught up to the princess. She frowned and flicked her tail impatiently. "Milady, please stay!" She rushed inside before she could finish. Lugio sighed. "How did I deal with this?" He followed her through the underwater tunnel that led to the main building, which was built so that water would not fill much of it. No one knew exactly why. Knowing the Paladins, it was probably either so they could make their chosen alcoholic beverage, or because they just thought it would be fun to do. Almost immediately, they could see that there had been a fight, with the floor and walls scratched and spattered with blood. Lugio sighed. "I knew it was a bad idea to bring him here," he thought. He inspected the blood. "Nartos, Michka, an elf," he said to himself. "Bosikos?" Princess Seluca asked. He nodded. "These are the gods." He searched the rest of the room and gasped, shouting in dialect. "What is it?" The princess ran up behind him, and also gasped, shouting some words that her mother would not approve of. It was the bodies of the two guards who had been sent with King Rileso, Anyaliza and Lucio, hastily hidden. "That be not a good sign. He's probably been captured or killed. The first be more likely. He be more useful alive than dead," Lucio said. "Then what are we waiting for? We must save him." "Yes, milady, but please be quiet. We don't know if we be alone." After leaving Savine, the group traveled to Sillery, as it was close to the territory of the Michka Gireno tribe. They reached it after 2 days of travel, on the second Shamachludi of Shivierami, just before Hiladi began. Linsco's older siblings and Thefia's mother noticed them just inside the town. They, like most Silurian farmers, lived on the edge of town. Linsco's oldest brother was Belasha Loso, who, fittingly, dwarfed Linsco, being even a little taller than the king. It was very strange to King Ridero, not being the tallest person around. He was slightly intimidated by it. Belasha Loso shared his not quite golden hair and blue eyes with his little brother. He grinned and hugged him tightly, lifting him off the ground. "Ushikiso!" Linsco's siblings rarely called him by his name, or even a diminutive or short form of it. Usually, they called him by one of his nicknames, like Ushikiso. It meant bird, because birds did not like him, and he did not talk much, unlike birds. Linsco tried to squirm out of Belasha Loso's grasp, his face reddening as he muttered in dialect about being too old for this, and that he was supposed to be working. "Nonsense!" said Belasha Loso, letting him go and nudging him affectionately. "You're never too old to be hugged by your siblings." He spoke in dialect as well. Most did in that part of town. "And we will hug you, Binos," said his older sister, Solazina. She was also much taller than Linsco, only a little shorter and smaller than Belasha Loso, and her hair and eyes were lighter than his. She shoved Belasha Loso aside. "Give me Galikiso, it's my turn." She gave Linsco her own hug. Binos and Galikiso were more of his nicknames. Well, Binos was more of a title, really. It was a modification of Bempos, which meant baby. It had started when Meria, the second youngest, was born, though, being a girl, she had been Labinas. When Linsco was born, it was only natural that the title was passed on to him, but Meria was still occasionally called Labinas, mostly when someone wanted to annoy her. Galikiso was a diminutive of cat. That had started because they thought he looked like a cat when trying to escape their hugs. Linsco shot the princess and Lanczú a pleading look. They smiled back at him, both far too entertained to stop this. Princess Silenda wished she and her brother were not so close in age. Lanczú was reminded a little of his relationship with his stepbrother, and taking mental notes in preparation for the arrival of his own younger sibling. One of his stepsisters was a bit younger than him, but not young enough for them to act like that. Once Soledo let him go, Mikya came forward. She was a little over a foot taller than Linsco, and slightly taller than the next siblings up, the twins, a fact she held over them every chance she got, which, since one was a priest in another town and the other was a belated nun, was not very often. Unlike the rest of her siblings, except the twins, depending on who you asked, she had brown hair and eyes. "Welcome back, Linsco quiso," she smiled. "You know, I think you've somehow managed to get shorter. Maybe I should start calling you Linsco quiso." Linsco stiffened and made an angry Linsco noise. Mikya laughed and hugged him. As she was the closest in age to him, her relationship was more teasing and light-hearted bullying than the aggressive affection of her older siblings. Meanwhile, Thefia, who had long ago accepted Linsco's siblings' eager displays of affections and jokes about his height as normal, hugged her mother, La Via Mercedes, better known as Via Mirsha. Via Mirsha was a beautiful woman. Her eyes were green as spring leaves. Her hair, visible in 2 loops of braids by her long, pointed ears, was thick and glossy, black as midnight. Her golden-brown skin was smooth and lustrous. Hers was a more rustic, handsome look than the princess's or the queen's, but still beautiful. "Maba, it's been too long," Thefia said in dialect. "How have things been here?" Via Mirsha shrugged. "Oh, fine. Most of the Rossena attacks have stopped." She sighed with relief. "Good. And the Soledo?" "Not much," she frowned. "I've heard something's happening in Lesia." Thefia frowned as well. "Really? What?" "I ain't sure. Nothing good. I think someone's attacking the villages around here. I can't remember if it's the Soledo, Rossena, or both." "The Soledo? I didn't think they were the type to attack siblings. With the Rossena, why would they work with them?" She sighed and shrugged. "I guess war changes people." Thefia was then attacked by all 7 of her younger siblings, who were all trying to hug her at the same time, overjoyed at the return of her sister. Even Mia, who was 13 and usually thought things like hugs and affection were silly, and the youngest 2, who had been very young when she left to become a soldier, joined in, though Mia jumped away a few seconds later and crossed her arms. The second oldest was called Faria. Like all of Ferron and Via Mirsha's daughters, she had inherited her mother's midnight black hair, though her eyes were a blue so light they were almost gray. She was an inch or 2 taller than Thefia, which she pointed out at every possible opportunity, and a little critical of her decision to leave and become a soldier instead of staying with her family in the wake of their father's death, especially so soon after the birth of Biadasica. The decision had partially been made so Thefia would have money to send back to them, but Faria still thought it would have been better for her to stay. The next was called Mia. Her eyes were very dark green, and she was turning out to be a little short. She was taller than Linsco, to her relief, but not by much. She was at that stage where she seemed to hate the world for no good reason, though this was in part due to her lingering grief over Ferron. She had been very close to her father, and thought that he had been murdered, an opinion shared by no one else. The only thing that seemed to make her happy was annoying her siblings. Next was Gireni. Like all of Ferron and Via Mirsha's sons, he had inherited his father's blonde hair, and was almost a perfect image of him, aside from the fact that he was 10. He took after his father in other ways, like having the most interest in the ways of the Soledo and being sympathetic towards the rebels. After the war had started, the Soledo had split into 2 factions, both of which confusingly referred to themselves as loyalists. The group that was loyal to the queen called the opposition rebels, and the group that was loyal to Lady Quinia called them royalists. For the sake of clarity, they will be referred to by the names by which the opposition calls them. The one after him was called Firso. He had green eyes like his mother, and was very close to her. Their relationship had especially strengthened after his father died. He hated seeing his mother sad, and while he did not believe that Ferron had been murdered, he did have some very interesting things to say about the person who did it if Mia turned out to be right, as well as anyone else who hurt his mother. Saying some of these things had made Via Mirsha wash his mouth out with soap and wonder where he had heard such words. She guessed Mia. Lugio came after him. He had eyes that were somewhere between blue and green and looked up to Irinio, literally and figuratively, especially after their father had died. While he shared Irinio's rebel sympathies, he did not fully understand them and often said things without knowing that many did not feel the same, which led to some very awkward conversations. The next was called Resho. He had only been 2 when his father died, and barely remembered him. He might have been sad about it, but as he was only 3 years old, he did not fully understand what had happened. It was similar to what had happened with Linsco when his parents died. The last, toddling along on her little legs, was called Biedasika. Her eyes had stayed blue, and she had only been a baby when her father died. Most mourned the fact that she would never know him, but, like Resho, she did not really understand what had happened. Thefia was laughing. Linsco smiled, though he was still trying to squirm out of Meria's grip. Lanczú and Princess Silenda were smiling as well, but in a different way. "You can't do this right now, I'm working," she said through her laughter. Then she looked at them and stopped her protests. "Oh my goodness, Lushakiso, you lost your first tooth," she said. "And Piedakisa, when did you get so big?" Resho scowled, and she laughed and added, "So have you, Reshokiso." Queen Silenda cleared her throat. Viamirsha and Elinsco's siblings looked over. Linsco sighed with relief as Meria let go of him. He straightened his hat and clothes and smoothed his hair, his face redder than the Jarissa King's hair. Viamirsha bowed hastily, as did Linsco's siblings and the older 2 of Thefia's siblings, once they finally got off her. Confused, Irinio and Firzo did the same hesitantly, while Luchon frowned, and Biedasika and Resho just stared at them with wide eyes. Thefia stood and straightened her clothes. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty, I didn't see you there. What brings you here?" Viamirsha spoke in Quinian now. Queen Silenda smiled. "It is all right. We have come to speak with the Gireni." Viamirsha nodded. "I see. Well, you could stay with us if you like." Linsco's parents were Thefia's godparents, so when Linsco was born, Mirsha and Ferron returned the favor. Because of this, when Linsco's parents died, they looked after the children until Belasceloso was old enough to do it himself, and Belasceloso, Solazinia, and Meria had returned the favor after Ferron died. "Thank you, but we can stay at the inn." She looked at Linsco and Thefia. "You two can stay with them." "Are you sure?" said Thefia. "We have Elinsco." "That's right," said Lanczú, grateful she had not said his full name. "They got me. I can protect them just as well as anyone else." "All right," said Thefia. She was still unsure about it, though. She did not doubt Lanczú's abilities, but more guards were better. "Just get some sleep." He nodded. "Of course I will." She looked at him. "That's what you said last time. Then you fell asleep while Zaboclon was in the middle of talking about why you're a heretic." "He's very boring, ma," Lanczú said. Thefia gave him a stern look. A man, old enough to have been a little boy during everything with the Mad King, walked over. He was almost as short as Linsco, with the braid of a married man, though it had been cut and only went down to his ears since he was a widower, and the clothes of a Beraden. Lanczú sighed. "Good morning." He spoke in Beraden dialect, clearly annoyed. The old man frowned and crossed his arms. "Elinsco resolution. Is this how you speak to your grandfather? I know Angisma didn't teach you what little sense she has, but I thought she at least taught you respect." He spoke in the same dialect. Lanczú stiffened and winced at the sound of his full name, both because of the Beraden double name and because having someone call one's full name is never a good sign. "Mon," he said through gritted teeth. The old man smiled. "Thank you. Now I reckon since you're here in Edinburgh you haven't seen how wrong you are and are still focused on this soldier nonsense." Lanczú glared at him. "Yes, I'm here to protect the Queen and her family." The man sighed. "I see. Soldier nonsense. I don't see why you'd want to do this instead of helping your family. It's much safer and you wouldn't be surrounded by no sneering snobs. You only got to become a merchant 'cause someone got killed by the Riskans, and your Zisnavio Brass and their gang tried to kill you multiple times. Besides, the baby can help. And what about Ronzinjo's children? Faralgisma Magria and Elongismo Gregio are older than me." Ronzio was Lanczú's stepfather. Farelia Magria and Elonce Gregio were 2 of his children, Lanczú's step-siblings. Ronzio's other daughter, Farelia Mercedes, was the one who was a little younger than Lanczú, and they used to joke that they would get married. Then Farelia Magria pointed out to them that their parents loved each other, something that seemingly everyone except their parents knew. They had mostly stopped the joke after that, though it was still brought up occasionally. That don't count, it was during a war, and I ain't considering that baby an heir until he or she's at least 5. As for the other 2, I ain't giving them control of one of the largest merchant empires in Quinia just 'cause my daughter decided to marry a man who only loves her money, the man said. We're in a war right now, and that ain't what happened, and you know it. Also, you're some farmer's son. Most people would say that's worse than a shepherd. And what about Il Gisnian Viobras? After Lanczú's father and Ronzion's wife died, he and Échoue decided to help each other since they were both widowed and had young children. Later, they decided to get married. Money had nothing to do with the marriage, though they, and their children, often questioned why they had not done it earlier. He inclined his head. All right, they ain't doing that no more. And I haven't just been a farmer's son since I was 8. Anyway, 2 of my friends became soldiers, and do you know what happened to them? They died! Lanczú could almost hear Zebocron saying something like, They are still doing it. I thought they gave up that life decades ago. Well, you ain't exactly the youngest, Lanczú pointed out. He shrugged. Yes, but I'm alive, and they ain't. Lanczú sighed. Well, remember that it don't matter what no one thinks of you. It only matters what I think of you, and you failed me in every way, said the man. Lanczú winced. Despite all his rebellion against what his grandfather wanted, those comments still hurt. The man ignored it. And for all y'all, remember that I'm the reason why y'all can get arrows in Caseta for a reasonable price. Lanczú could almost hear Zebocron's voice in his head, shouting that all y'all was redundant. He left. Linsco, Thefia, and Princess Silenda all stared at Lanczú. He noticed their expressions and sighed, his shoulders slumping and his gaze dropping to the ground. N'est Lincier's your grandfather? Thefia said in disbelief. We've known each other for a year and you never told us? Princess Silenda nodded. Yes, I knew your family were merchants, but Menzisno n'est Lincier? What? Said Menzisno, rounding on his grandson. You never told your friends about me? Lanczú sighed. Didn't come up, he said through gritted teeth. Menzisno sighed and shook his head. You disappoint me more and more. He turned and walked back to the shop. Lanczú glared at him as he left, searching for a retort, but sighed, finding none. All right, I think I understand why you don't talk about him, said Thefia. Lanczú smiled ruefully. He ain't all bad. At least he prepared me for being a soldier. He sometimes wondered if he was enacting the same thing with the other soldiers as he had been with his grandfather. He was constantly acting as if he had to prove something to them, even though somewhere he knew nothing would be enough for them. Menzisno would only be pleased by him accepting the merchant empire, and then would still probably criticize him. And most of the soldiers would never accept a Baradan boy, no matter how Sener in his clothes or how Ozin in his accent. There's also that contradiction. He loved his province, but hated how it made people see him. He loved his family, but hated the pressure and expectation that came with being the grandson of Menzisno n'est Lincier. Lanczú looked at Princess Silenda. Don't tell your brother. Princess Silenda nodded. I will not. Thefia sighed. Well, remember to get some sleep tonight. I will, Lanczú said. They both knew that was a lie. That night, Lanczú ate with the queen and her family, which here means that the queen and her family ate while Lanczú sat with a hand on his sword and looked around, not actually eating anything until King Ridero ordered him to. With the Renchin having been left in Casedo, Queen Silenda offered to brush and braid her daughter's hair, and, though the girl said she could do it herself, she accepted it. She did not have enough of these moments with her mother, especially since the war had started. Linsco and Thefia ate with their families, which meant exactly what it sounds like. Who was that boy, Thefakisa? Irino asked. Is he going to be your husband? They were all speaking in dialect again, and Thefia had put on a dress. Linsco was also dressed more casually. Is Ulpinos jealous? Fierzo asked. Linsco sighed. Despite his best attempts, the Binos title had spread to Thefia's siblings. Are they going to fight? Luchon asked eagerly. Why were you wearing pants? Fierzo asked. They're for boys. He sounded funny, like Mezisno, Luchon said. So did the fancy people, but they didn't sound like Menzisno. They sounded that kind of like Ducaredeso. One of them was really short, Fierso said. I thought no one could be shorter than Ulpiños except a little boy or girl. Is she a little girl? Linsco made an angry Linsco noise. Maria laughed in a way that Linsco deemed evil. Yes, Fierso Stijo, I've done you well! Linsco glared at her. Tefia sighed. You can't say that about people, Lushakiso. It's rude. Luchon frowned. But they do sound funny. Tefia paused, trying to find a way of explaining the difficult history of Beradens to a 7-year-old. You might think that, but you can't say things like that to people or about them. Would you like it if someone said you sound funny? He considered that. No, he said finally. Then you shouldn't say things like that about other people. And very bad people like to make fun of how they talk, so if you say that, then you sound bad too. She looked at Fierso. Fierso Sisho, pants are for boys, but they're also for soldiers. I'm a soldier, so sometimes I have to wear pants. She turned to Erino. And Irikiso, I ain't gonna marry Linsco Sisho. Shouldn't it be Linsco Sisho? Luchon asked. She sighed. If he were Ozinin, like us, I'd call him that. But he ain't. He's Beradin, so I called him Linsco Sisho, like how we call Menzisno that instead of Menyosico. Luchon blinked. He had not known that Menzisno was not his real name. He'd be the first to say that it really should be Linsco Sisho, not Linsco Sisho. We call him that anyway, Linsco said. Anyway, Tefia continued, we ain't gonna get married. She's right, Maria said, smiling. She's gonna marry Ulpiños. Both Linsco and Tefia blushed furiously and tried not to think about the last Ilarda Viesh. Vyamirsha smiled. Faria, Mia, Belasha Loso, and Solazina chuckled, and the rest of the children and Maria just laughed. We're 17, and we ain't gonna get married, we're just friends, Tefia said. Linsco made a defensive Linsco noise in agreement. Their relationship was complicated. Their parents were each other's godparents, and Ferron and Mirsha had raised Linsco in his earliest memories, and continued to help Belasha Loso until Ferron died and Linsco and Tefia left, which made them something like siblings, and Linsco's siblings were, of course, constantly joking about them getting married, but if anything, that had discouraged them from seeing if maybe they did love each other like that. And, of course, there was what had happened after Ilardaviesh. So what were they? Very good, but ultimately platonic friends? Siblings? Should they marry? They did not know. Maria laughed. Well, you can get married, since you're both 17. Quinian law regarding marriage was that a 17-year-old could get married, but only to someone the same age, and only if the parents of both spouses said they could. After someone turned 18, he or she could marry anyone else over 18. The church's marrying age, for elves, was 16 with the same restrictions, but otherwise the same, though it also said you still had to follow civil laws regarding it. The age for other vocations was similar, 17 and 16 under the church's rule. If his or her parents and the seminary or religious order said it was fine, 18 and older had no restrictions, and civil laws still had to be followed. Most of the time, though, people in Quinia married between 20 and 30. Anyone marrying younger than that was probably someone who really needed more people to work his or her farm, an otherwise poor and alone person who needed the security marriage would provide, a noble who needed to secure an alliance, or things were chaotic and he or she wanted to get married before he or she died. I'll be 18 and Rielami. He won't be until Fogetelomi. And we won't, Tefia said. Maria grinned. It did not matter that they were only a few months apart. Tefia would be 18 and Linsco would be 17, so they could not get married. The principle behind that law was a combination of lawmakers being cautious, and because it was not the end of the world if a wedding had to be pushed back a few months. Was that other boy your Beradin friend, Linsco Riza? Vyamirsha asked. Tefia nodded. She smiled. He seemed like a good boy, a good friend. A good husband, Maria added with a smile. Tefia sighed, and Faria jokingly glared at her. How dare you, Marisija? Saying she's going to marry every boy she makes eye contact with is my job, she said. Maria laughed. Solazina crossed her arms as well, giving Maria a mockingly stern look. Merikisa! In this house, we say that she loves Ulpiños, which she does. You're gonna have to go outside if you want to say she loves someone else, which she don't. Linsco and Thefia blushed and glared at her, again trying not to think about La Stellardovyesh. She laughed, and Belasha also smiled. The twins? Linsco mumbled once things had calmed down a little. Belasha also nodded. They're doing fine, last I checked. Father Jean-Vin and Sister Ashadelia were 5 years younger than Belasha Loso and 7 years older than Linsco. They had run off to the seminary and the convent as soon as they were old enough, to the surprise of absolutely no one. They could barely read a word of Quinian, but were practically fluent in Adelicite, and could read the Levang, the holy texts, and many theological and philosophical works in it, though Sister Ashadelia had since learned to read Quinian and several other languages due to joining the Baladins, had on several occasions woken up the rest of the house while trying to leave to Señora Henya with Father Herminio, and their general idea for the best Lacaria time seemed to be the middle of the night. There was the first Dechadi of Anchigne, where traditionally Lacaria was said just before the sun was up. Elardovyesh, the vigil of Aranyahos, which started just at Agradi and typically ended in the middle of the night, and a surprising number of others. Vyamirsha smiled. Oh, your parents would be so proud with a priest for a son and a nun for a daughter. You say that as if there's something wrong with marriage, said Maria. Of course there ain't, and I'm sure they'd be just as proud of you if they could see you get married or join the seminary or the monastery or the convent. Belasha Loso and Solazinia whistled innocently, since the former was 30 and the latter approaching it, but neither had gotten married yet. Belasha Loso had become infamous in town for his antics trying to impress girls, none of which had actually worked. Solazinia knew that one of their neighbors loved her, but was waiting for him to admit it. Oh, it's fine, said Vyamirsha. I enjoy your company. Her smile turned sad. I was so worried about what would happen after Fakasisho died. Irinho looked down, fidgeting. Mia frowned. Thefia nodded. I wonder what was going on just before then. Kept always muttering to himself and made that board in your room. Yes, and he thought people were watching him. Said things about weddings, sisters, monks, or maybe it was friars, and pears. For some reason. Vyamirsha shook her head. Whatever it was, he never really told me, and I can't make no sense of what he left behind. Something about sisters, Thefia mused. Didn't his sisters die around when Elisijol's parents did? Do I have a secret living aunt? And weddings, maybe yours? Although Linsco went by that instead of something like Elinsco or Eli, Thefia had always called him Elisijol. She shook her head. The ones I knew did, but there was another. She was a little strange, though, never around much. Disappeared completely about 10 years ago. She frowned. I can't remember her name. Some major prophets. Riadelia, Ashadelia? Thefia frowned. Must not have been a great relationship. Wonder why. Vyamirsha shrugged. Must be Soledo business. Probably best not to look into it much. You won't find nothing, and if you do, you'll wish you hadn't. They're very secretive, and secrets are always kept for a reason. Thefia nodded. I guess you're right. She sighed. I wish he'd told us what was going on. Vyamirsha nodded. So do I, Thefakisa. Were the fancy people the queen and her family? Luchon asked. Thefia nodded. Yes, the princess and I are friends, you could say. But Irikiso says that the queen is bad, said Luchon. He says that she's mean to us for no reason. Thefia exchanged glances with Vyamirsha and Faria. The queen is stubborn, she said. So she's bad? No, she tries her best, she said slowly. Gireni crossed his arms. I don't like her. She's the reason we're in this. Irikiso, you can't say that about her, she said. Linsco nodded. She's the queen. I don't agree with everything she says, but I promise to protect my country, so I'm gonna do that. Gireni frowned. But she hates the Soledi. Everyone older than Gireni shook their heads. She don't, Irikiso, said Vyamirsha. She disagrees with Lady Inya, but she don't hate the Soledi, said Thefia. Don't exactly like them, though, Linsco said, and she really needs to think about who's around before she talks. Thefia sighed and nodded. She had lost count of the number of times the queen had said something that, while not as insulting as what, say, Zebulcron or his mother would, was still rude, while she was standing only a few feet away. Irino looked skeptical, but Faria moved the conversation to something less awkward. "I'm glad to have you back, Thefakisa," she said. Thefia smiled. "Thank you, Falkikisa." Mia muttered something. That night, Linsco had strange dreams. Linsco was sure it was about his predecessor. He felt the strange love of Genieloso, who would later become the king of the Jarisse, not to be confused with the Jarissa King, teasing, bickering, and a childish insistence that he did not love his brother. He felt it become something more like the annoying affection of Linsco's own siblings. He smelled sea air and heard the strange music and language of Sylvie and Nelfi, and felt the almost maternal affection of Sylvie, and the annoyance he felt towards Nelfi, due to her trying to compete for the title of most wild toddler. He saw the luxury of a duke's son, and the combination of sword fighting and magic that Elinsco had developed, and felt the combination of annoyance and excitement that came with the cursed mage's request. He saw the Jarissa King, with flaming red hair and amber eyes, and felt the pain of Moria and Temi's curses, being set adrift in a time that was not his, and knowing that no matter what he did, no one would remember him except his annoying sword and his brethren, who were mostly dead. He saw the Mad King of Riska, ranting and raving about how he, not Queen Mikya, should rule Riska, and felt with this friendship with the Quinian and Riskan princes, painfully aware of the distance between them, that they ruled countries, and he herded goats. The next morning, they met just outside town, and set off for the Michka city of Terravine, Lanczú tired from not getting enough sleep. He had stayed up until King Ridero ordered him to get some sleep. Thefia sighed and crossed her arms. Jarissa, I told you to get some sleep, she said in a similar tone her mother would use when she learned that Irino and Lucian had stayed up all night playing. It did not help that she used his full name, though she and Linsco usually did that when there were few other people around him. "I heard you, Ma," Lanczú muttered. He looked up. "And it's Lanczú, Jarissa." Thefia glared at him. On the way, they found a Michka guard. She was a lilac and cream tortoiseshell with green eyes, lithe and strong like most of the Gireni. Gireni adhered to the Alayan principle that one should be able to fight no matter what he was wearing, so she was wearing a green dress, loose and light, though without the extra skirts most Quinians wore. Michka also had little love for the cumbersome armor Silendite soldiers wore, as it made them slower and louder. They wore some light armor, though. She was holding a spear. Her ears perked up as she heard them coming. She looked at them and smiled. "Well, this is an interesting party. What brings you here, your majesties?" she said, bowing. "We must speak with Ulbriacico," said Queen Silenda. She nodded. "Follow me." They did. After they had been walking for a little bit, Lanczú walked up to her. "So, what's your name?" he asked. He was trying to be more careful with his accent, but it was hard to concentrate on that after how little he had slept. "Sarola," said the Girena. He smiled. "Nice name. I'm Lanczú, and my friends back there are Linsco and Thefia." "Elinsco, and is that for Elinsco?" Lanczú nodded, relieved she had not made fun of his nickname. "Interesting names. Your parents liked history, then?" she asked. Elinsco and Elinsco, though they sounded similar, did not have similar origins. Elinsco meant protector of wealth, and Elinsco meant to illuminate. He shrugged. "Well, our grandfathers were friends with Lins." It was not that dangerous to say that. Lins had been popular and well respected in Bori, even before he saved the kingdom, and Corino was the only one who had left town. Sarola nodded. "I see. Must be interesting knowing such famous people." Lanczú shook his head. "No, Lins died before I was born, and Linsco's from here." "You must hear stories, at least." Lanczú sighed. "Most of what I hear from Maman is how much he don't want me to be a soldier." She looked up. "Really? I think being a soldier is a noble thing." He nodded. "I wouldn't have become one if it weren't. I just wish he would see that." Sarola looked back at Linsco and Thefia. "What about you two? Why'd you join?" "My father was a soldier. I joined after he died, and Elinsco came with me," said Thefia. Sarola gave her a sympathetic look. "I'm sorry. How did he die, if you don't mind my asking?" She smiled. "It's fine. He drowned in the river. Ferron had been able to swim, but the snow had been melting, the ground was wet, and the river was flooding. He slipped, fell in, and was not able to fight the current. Mia thought someone had drowned him on purpose. I'm very sorry. Sarola looked ahead and frowned. I'm sorry, this sounds terrible, but we're here. She led them into Terravine. It looked like a fairly normal town. There were simple houses by farms on the edge and sturdier houses in town, as well as the more elaborate houses of the gentry. The prince should be this way, Sarola said, leading them to the castle in the center of town. Sarola led them inside into a large room where a large orange tabby Michka with blue eyes stood behind a rounded table with the map of Ozin spread across it. Pieces were placed on it, reminding the princess of a chessboard. His brow was furrowed in concentration. The queen wants to speak with you, your excellency, Sarola said. The Michka looked up from his map and smiled. Ah, good morning, Queen Silenda, he said, smiling. What brings you here? Good morning, Prince Sirion. We are hoping for assistance with the situation regarding the Soledo, said Queen Silenda. At the mention of the war with the Soledo, Prince Sirion straightened, his friendly demeanor becoming serious. He met the queen's eyes, his gaze hard. As I said in my response to your letter, no. The Rosseni have been swarming our land. I cannot ignore that for this foolish war. The Soleti have served the crown since before there was one. They have been your most loyal and powerful ally since the beginning, except between the Great Jarissa War and Linsco and Bombir, when we thought they were dead, of course. Anyway, why would they betray you now? And to the Rosseni? I think the only one of us who hates them more are us Gireni. The Gireni had split off from the Rosseni. The Rosseni maintained that they should serve the Rojasico, or Rojasica, whenever he, or she, appeared. While the Gireni thought there was a good reason why no one said the Dark Lord's name, and they should not support his successors. Queen Silenda clenched her teeth. They have betrayed us, Prince Sirion. It is what we get for trusting a tribe of spies and liars. Linsco, Lanczú, and Princess Silenda all looked at Thethia. She coughed. If you will not help us, then we have nothing to do here, the queen continued. Prince Sirion nodded. Then you do not. Sarola, take them back to Sillery. Sarola nodded. Yes, your excellency. She turned to the party. Let's go. They followed her out. A little way from Terravine, they were attacked by a band of Rosseni. Linsco, Lanczú, Sarola, and King Ridero formed a protective circle around the queen and princess and fought them off easily. Is everyone all right, princess? Queen Silenda? Sarola asked. Everyone nodded, but Thethia frowned, blinking and looking around with increasing panic. Are you all right? Lanczú said, then frowned, his accent thickening. Where's Linsige? Thethia fidgeted, looking around before noticing something. 2 horses and a cart. The people riding the horses were wearing cloaks, but she could see something else too, the glint of sunlight on armor. Elinsige! She cried, taking off and running after them. Zizija! Lanczú called. He reached out to stop her from running into danger, but his hand closed on air. Thethia ran as fast as she could, but not fast enough. Not even fear for her greatest friend gave her infinite energy. Thethia ran until she could no longer, until her lungs burned and she collapsed in the grass, exhausted, blinking away spots and on the verge of panic. Elinsige! What happened? She gasped in dialect. Who could do that? The rest of the group caught up with her after, though they had been thinking straight and actually taken their horses. Princess Silenda was fidgeting with her hair. Oh, dear, this is not good. I will bet anything that the Rosseni have something to do with it. She was getting that horrible feeling again, the same one from when the war started, and when the old minister of trade looked at her family, or really did anything. She had no idea how someone so obviously evil had been able to continue serving in the government. Lanczú nodded. This ain't good. He was practically speaking all in dialect. Thethia tried to sit up, but did so too quickly and fell back in the grass. We have to find him! We have to rescue him! Yes, but not right now, Lanczú sighed. I'm sorry, Thethia, but you can't keep running, and they're too far away. We ain't finding nothing right now. King Ridero nodded. I think we should return to Sillery to rest and decide what to do. The rest of the group nodded. King Ridero gave Thethia some water, and they all went back to Sillery. Thethia reluctantly.